Hi everybody, welcome to another video. So today we're having a look at a YT160 spray gun, and we're comparing that against the R500. Now these spray guns are available under a multitude of different names. The R500 is sort of the original one. They're all made by a company called Rongpeng in China, which is a big manufacturer of various equipment, but one of them, it happens to be spray guns. Now, you get various spray guns that are the same as these, but they're just called different things. One that springs to mind is a Drizzle. They call it a Drizzle D1. It's just another adaptation of the A610, the YT160. So like the Drizzle, the YT160, etc., are the more modern looking guns, the A610. When they first brought out the A610, it had actually a different cap on it, so it produced a much more smaller, wetter pattern, which a lot of people didn't like. They liked the idea of a bigger pattern, which I can understand, although it's not actually the be all and end all. But one of the things that is often put across with these guns, and as I say, although we're looking at these two guns here, the 160 and the R500, this will apply to a lot of guns that are generic. They're just a manufacturer, a company or anybody can come along and say, right, I want 2,000 of these guns and I want to call them a Endicott R715, and Rongpeng will manufacture 2,000 guns in the colour you want, calling it exactly what you wanted, and then you can put it on the market, sell it or whatever. And although it's a different gun, it is actually the same gun. So this gun is very generic. It's a loose copy, and anybody that's watched my previous videos will know this. It's a loose copy of an NSI Water W400, which itself is a very good vulnerable gun. It's been around for ages, still around in Europe and the US and Australia, as far as I know. Not in Asia. Asia, the Kiwamis have taken over, but there's been a bit of a problem with the Kiwami 4, the original cheaper Kiwami 4, because they've withdrawn it from sale. And I know why that is. It's because it sold relatively cheap, was as good as the W400s. So all the markets that take the W400 were moaning effectively. So the importers in the UK, etc., were all moaning about the price of this thing. So it's been withdrawn. I have no inside information that tells me that, but I'm pretty sure you'll find that's what's actually happened. It's just corporate politics, really. But the W400 has been around for ages, so it's a play on that gun. So effectively it's actually quite good in that these guns have a self-sealing tip, so they just use a taper to actually seal the tip. So there's no seals or anything to replace, although there are seals obviously in the what they call a needle packing to seal the needle, etc. But they're reasonably reliable guns. All these guns are reasonably reliable. One of the things that they also copy from the original W400 or Kiwami 4 is they're actually quite good on air consumption. Now, one of the things you will actually, if you're looking at any of these guns, you will see that the amount of air that these things are supposed to consume vary widely. For example, the YT160 was quoted on AliExpress, which is where I got it from, as 15 CFM, requiring 15 CFM of air. The R500 was quoted as using 4 CFM of air. Now, neither of those are right. People that watch the channel will know you need to use these things at about 2.5 bar to get a good flat finish with clear coat. And when I say good flat finish, I'm talking considering the price of the gun. Don't for 1 minute think that you're going to buy one of these and it's going to be a super flat finish capable of competing with the best guns that are out there, because you'd be kidding yourself if you thought that. But they are a very competent gun for a reasonable price that doesn't use a load of air. but they certainly use more than is publicised. If you think to yourself about 8 CFM of air, you would be right, which ironically is right in the middle of those two figures that I just quoted you, that I saw on AliExpress when you see these things for sale. I think the Drizzle's is sold as an LVLP gun. I always question sometimes whether LVLP actually exists. As I've said before in my other videos, it's a bit like Utopia, isn't it? In that you think you found something that will give you a superb finish, hardly uses any air, very competent gun, not expensive. It's sort of like the ideal thing to have, isn't it? And I question whether they actually exist. Obviously you get some guns that use less than others, and this is one of those guns that use less, but it certainly doesn't use less than a MIDI or a mini gun. And some of the MIDI guns are actually quite good intermediate guns in that they give you reasonable speed and performance, and they don't actually use loads of air. They certainly use less air than this, but you've got to equate whether the fact that if a gun uses more air, it gets your job done quicker, therefore you need to draw that air for less time. You know, your compressor may well be capable of powering a gun for, you know, a rear quarter or a couple of wings or something like that without any problem. So the air consumption thing is very much a bone of contention, really, because a lot of people make a play on that. And they're not necessarily right. Hopefully people like me and others can steer you in the right direction, that are silly enough and foolish enough to have so many spray guns that they can actually try them against each other and see for themselves what the air consumption is like. Performance wise with both of these guns, and I'm effectively not going to pin down, well, the YT160 does this and the R500 does that, because as I've said to you before, they are very, very similar. Obviously they look slightly different, but the actual performance of these is very, very similar, and they are a good, competent gun for somebody that wants to spray at home. I've heard people say, and people have told me actually, that they've been told that the gun doesn't produce loads of overspray. And I would question that, and the reason I would question that is because to get good performance out of these guns, to get a good finish, you need to use these guns about 2.5 bar, which is about 36 psi. And where you get the problems is because you've bumped it up that little bit extra to get that better finish, you get much more overspray. So they defeat the object, really. You are better off getting a smaller gun and just taking more time over what you do, because it will use less air and it will also allow you to keep the overspray down, although you will be spraying for a bit longer. Certainly a lot of people, when they look at my videos, say to me that that gun's not got much overspray. What's it like, or what's your settings, etc, etc. I normally do say the settings, and I'll say the settings for these. Most clear guns I use on full and full, so full fan and full fluid, because the material is thicker generally than a base coat, and you just want to get the material on. You need to get the material on to get it to flow out. So I tend to use them full and full. There are a few exceptions. The original WS400 was one of those exceptions, and there will be a few other exceptions as well. But generally, I tend to use them full fan, full fluid, and I've already given you the pressure on both of these. I use them at 36 psi, 2.5 bar. So it really depends on what you want as far as styling goes. So the original R500 is a little bit cheaper, and it's a little bit more dated in style. I mean, style doesn't actually paint your panel, does it? But, you know, some people have their preferences. But as I said before at the start, or towards the start, all these guns are more or less the same. So what I would do is I would just go for something that in your area is available and isn't particularly expensive. You might find the odd tweak, but that is going to be more down to production tolerances than to real differences in the gun. When things are made relatively cheap like this, obviously the tolerances of passing something out the door will vary quite widely. So although they use precision machines, they're not precise machines. They're just reasonably good at what they do. So you're going to get some production variation. So you might get one where the fan's slightly bigger than the other, but just because you've bought one doesn't mean that it's going to be exactly the same as the other one. And you will get a lot of that throughout all of this. There's a gun I've recently just bought, and it's styled very much along the lines of these guns, but it is actually slightly different. But I will get a proper review out on it. I'll put a link in the description if you so wish to look at it, of an unboxing. But I'm trying to find, what I've been trying to find is a replacement for the Kiwami 4, something that is reasonably priced, so not as cheap as these, but reasonably priced, very good on air consumption. One of the things that I did on the video, I'll try and remember to put a link in the description as well. When I was looking at the air consumption of these LVLP guns, I will remember to put it on there because it is relevant. And I used the Kiwami 4 for that, which is the original gun. So it's the same as the W400 Balearia. And that actually uses less air because you can work that works perfectly well at 2 bar and will give as good, if not better, normally better finish than these guns, give at 2.5 bar. And using that at 2 bar, so 29 PSI, it actually uses less air than these guns. So, as I say, it does depend what pressure you use in that as to what the air consumption is. But that gun has been really, really good, but they withdrew it from sale. So I've been trying to find something that was reasonably priced. So, as I said before, a bit dearer than these, but would actually work quite well. And one of the things I'm finding with that, it's actually working quite well, but the tip is a real devil to seal. Now, it uses the same tip as these guns. These are fully interchangeable. The tips are the same. As I say, they're a loose copy of the NSI washer, so they actually would fit a W400 or an LPH 400, although obviously these aren't split tip like on the LPH 400. But they're all interchangeable because they are direct copies. And I found that swapping a tip over from one of these guns, I think it was the R500 because I've got a few spare tip sets with these, I found swapping it over with that actually helped it cure the problem, and it didn't cause the R500 to give the same problem as the Segoli gun. So what I was trying to get to there was production tolerances. Certain things will be passed that another manufacturer probably wouldn't pass. So if somebody says to you, my one's really brilliant, and somebody says my one isn't particularly good, that could just be the production tolerances being out. Just the fact that they pass something that often maybe wouldn't be passed. One of the things you'll notice sometimes with these guns, the finish they give, it's a little bit what I would call cheesy, and that's normally because there's quite a bit of material going on, because both of these, and it's true with the W400 Balearia, both of these will put out quite a lot of material, so they can actually catch the new painter out. Yes, you can back the material off and it works reasonably well, but the atomization just isn't there, I find. So you need to get the material out to get enough on the panel and let it flow out. But one of the things with these guns, as I said, you get like what I would call a slightly cheesy effect, and that's down to the fact that the atomization isn't brilliant. There are many guns that atomize much better than this. Yes, they're going to be more money, but the atomization isn't brilliant. So most people will get, what I'm saying is I think most people would probably use these at home. They would buy them for a project they've got to do. They've got to do their car. They don't want to spend loads of money. They've got to look after the kids. They've got to look after the wife. Oh, the wife's got to look after them. It's a balancing act often for people. So I can't say here and say, oh no, buy an $800 gun because it's much better, because it's just maybe not what people want. but you do have to accept that there will be limitations to the finish you get. But what I was going to say is, if you're using these at home, chances are you're going to get a few nibs in it, etc. So you're going to want to sand and polish. So you just give it a light sanding over just to remove any blemishes. Flat and polish they call it, don't they? So you're flattening the paintwork anyway. So, you know, at the end of the day, what a good spray gun gives you, I find anyway, is the ability to save quite a lot of time, because you can get a good result straight off the gun and then you just literally denib it. But you see the two patterns there, more or less the same, and all of these guns are going to be more or less the same. So you just have to go for whatever's available in your area and it's the cheapest. And you can get lots of different size tips for these, and different caps, you know, 1.7, 1.9, 2.5, 2 I think you can get, 1.1, loads of different sizes in these various generic guns. Plenty to choose from, but the final results, which is what we're looking at now, you won't find any difference between them because they are virtually the same gun. Styling wise, they're quite different. And as I say, if you're looking at any of the other guns in this line, they're all made by the same company. It's just got a different name slapped on the side. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video as always, and you keep watching them and I'll keep them coming. And if you have enjoyed the video, maybe think about giving us a thumbs up, and maybe even if you want to push the boat out, then think about giving us a subscription. Cheers, guys. Bye bye.